Welcome back, my Mobius strip managers and Klein bottle coordinators. I'm your hyperdimensional herald, here to guide you through the mind-bending world of interdimensional team building. Remember, in the multiverse, getting on the same page is less about alignment and more about figuring out which one of you is currently experiencing time backwards. Now, let's embark on our journey through the treacherous terrain of team building, where trust falls become quantum leaps and icebreakers might just shatter the very fabric of reality. Folks, coordinating this team-building exercise is more complex than solving the three-body problem. Instead of just three celestial bodies, we're dealing with an infinite number of interdimensional colleagues, each with their own gravitational pull towards the coffee machine. Stay tuned for our first segment, The Parable of the Parallel Picnic, or as I like to call it, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Schrodinger's Potato Salad. Gather round my dimensionally displaced dinner guests for the Parable of the Parallel Picnic. It's a tale as old as time and as new as tomorrow, depending on which universe you're tuning in from. Once upon a time-space continuum in a universe not so different from our own. Well, actually infinitely different, but let's not split quantum hairs. There was a mid-level probability adjuster named Polly Parabola. Polly was the kind of employee who considered thinking outside the box to be quaint advice from a simpler three-dimensional era. One fateful day after her 7th cup of tacchiochino, guaranteed to wake you up yesterday, Polly received an email that would change her life and several parallel lives. Mandatory interdimensional team building picnic. Bring a dish to share. Failure to attend will result in immediate demotion to tardigrade in Universe X77. Determined to make a good impression, Polly decided to bring her famous Schrodinger's casserole, a dish simultaneously delicious and disgusting until observed. As she arrived at the designated picnic spot, a lovely patch of quantum foam by the event horizon of the office's central black hole, Polly realized she had a slight problem. You see, dear listeners, in her haste to impress, Polly had forgotten the first rule of interdimensional cooking. Always account for the holographic principle. For those of you who snoozed through Professor Hawking's lecture on cosmic cookery, let me explain. The holographic principle suggests that all the information in our 3D universe might be encoded on a 2D surface, much like how a hologram creates a 3D image from a 2D surface. In culinary terms, it's like trying to serve a 3-course meal using only emojis as your ingredients. As Polly set down her casserole, reality hiccuped. Suddenly, her lovingly prepared 3D dish was nothing more than a flat 2D projection. It was like the world's most disappointing pizza. All the calories, none of the volume. But Polly, ever the problem solver, decided to make the best of it. "Who wants some flatland frittata?" she announced, brandishing her suddenly two-dimensional dish like a quantum QVC host. Her colleagues gathered around, a motley crew of interdimensional beings. There was Bob from accounting, who existed as a probability cloud of productivity. Hannah from HR, who experienced time backwards and was already complaining about the food poisoning she would get tomorrow. And let's not forget Sarah, the intern who accidentally quantum tunneled into the position of CEO during last week's coffee break.
Oh, yes.
As they all reached for a slice of Polly's paradoxical picnic offering, the true challenge of interdimensional team building became clear. How do you break bread with a colleague who exists in a superposition of hunger states? How do you engage in small talk when your words might accidentally erase someone's timeline? But just as Polly was about to call it quits and accept her fate as a tardigrade, something miraculous happened. in struggling to share an impossible meal, in grappling with the absurdity of their situation, the team found common ground. They laughed at the ridiculousness of it all, swapped stories about their weirdest interdimensional encounters, and even started a betting pool on which universe would collapse next. In that moment, Polly realized the true meaning of team building in a fractured multiverse. It wasn't about trust falls or ropes courses or even understanding each other perfectly. It was about embracing the chaos, finding humor in the impossible, and realizing that in the grand cosmic joke of existence, we're all just trying to enjoy our slice of two-dimensional pie. And so, dear listeners, as we close the cosmic lunchbox on the parable of the parallel picnic, remember, in the vast potluck of the multiverse, it's not about what dish you bring. It's about how you handle it when that dish violates the laws of physics. And maybe, just maybe, the real team building was the fundamental forces we broke along the way. Stay tuned. Up next, we'll be exploring the thrilling world of trust falls in non-Euclidean space. Spoiler alert, in a Klein bottle there is no down, only further in. Happy falling! Welcome back, my topologically tangled team players. I'm your non-Euclidean narrator, and we're about to dive headfirst into the mind-bending world of trust falls in non-Euclidean space. Remember, in this segment, falling back might just mean falling forward in time, sideways through dimensions, and possibly inside out through a Klein bottle. Confused? Perfect. You're right where you need to be. Now, before we start our interdimensional trust-building exercises, let's address the hypercube in the room. What exactly is non-Euclidean space, and why does it matter more to your corporate team building than the color of your company-mandated quantum-entangled neckties? Non-Euclidean geometry, my dear probability waves, is what happens when mathematics decides to rebel against the tyranny of flat surfaces and parallel lines. It's the geometric equivalent of your teenage years, defying the rules set by its parent, Euclidean geometry, which had been the cool kid on the mathematical block since ancient Greece. The story begins with a mathematical maverick named Nikolai Ivanovich Lobachevsky, who in the 1820s looked at Euclid's fifth postulate about parallel lines and said, "Niet." He proposed a geometry where parallel lines can spread apart or even meet, which is about as scandalous in the world of mathematics as suggesting casual Fridays in a universe where time flows backwards. Around the same time, János Bolyai was independently cooking up similar ideas in Hungary, proving that great minds think alike, even when they're thinking about things that make most minds feel like they've been put through a taffy puller in 4 dimensions. But it was Bernhard Riemann who really blew the lid off the geometric jelly jar in 1854 with his work on manifolds, creating a framework for understanding spaces with any number of dimensions and any kind of curvature. Riemann essentially said, why stop at flat or curved when we can have spaces that twist, turn, and tie themselves into knots that would make a Boy Scout weep with envy? Now, you might be wondering, why should I care about this geometric gimcrackery? I can barely manage my 3-dimensional expense reports. Well, my cubicle-bound cosmonauts, non-Euclidean geometry isn't just mathematical navel-gazing, it's the language the universe uses to write its diary. Einstein's theory of general relativity, which describes gravity as the curvature of space-time, is written in the sweeping curves and undulating manifolds of non-Euclidean geometry. It's thanks to this geometry that we understand everything from the majestic spirals of galaxies to the math behind why you always pick the slowest moving queue at the interdimensional cafeteria. But enough about the cosmic significance. Let's bring this back to our interdimensional office space. In a non-Euclidean workplace, thinking outside the box becomes less of a metaphor and more of a survival strategy. Your desk might be a Mobius strip, your filing cabinet could be a Klein bottle, and the path to the coffee machine might require traversing a hyperbolic plane. Which brings us to our cautionary tale. Remember poor Quark from quantum accounting? They decided to really commit to the trust fall exercise in our non-Euclidean office space. As they tipped backwards, the fabric of space-time rippled. Suddenly, Quark was falling through every possible reality simultaneously. Their left arm landed in a universe made entirely of grape jelly. Their right foot ended up as the keystone of a transtemporal arch. And their sense of humor, well, that ended up here, with me, which explains why these puns have been even more dreadful than usual. The moral of the story. In non-Euclidean space, look before you leap becomes calculate the curvature of space-time before you casually tip backwards. It's less falling with style and more existential stop-motion animation. But here's where it gets really fun. Thanks to the quirks of non-Euclidean geometry, your trust fall might just loop you right back to where you started. Congrats! You've just experienced a closed time-like curve. That dizziness you're feeling? It's not vertigo. It's the universe's way of high-fiving you for breaking causality. Now, my Planck-length planners, I know what you're cogitating. But host, how do we schedule these trust falls when the smallest unit of time is the Planck time? About 10 to the minus 43 seconds over 10 to the minus 35 meters.
Wait, what?
And to that I say, that's the neat part. You don't. Just simply exist in a superposition of all possible meeting times. Scheduling meetings across incompatible timelines is more difficult than synchronizing watches in Ender's game. At least Ender only had to deal with relativity between Earth and the battle school. We're juggling time zones across infinite realities. Your colleagues will both catch you and not catch you until the moment of observation collapses the wave function of your social calendar. As we close this segment on non-Euclidean trust exercises, I'd like to leave you with a thought-provoking question. In your own life, how might embracing the twists and turns of non-Euclidean thinking change your approach to problem solving? Are you ready to take a leap of faith into the unknown, knowing that in a non-Euclidean universe, you might just land right back where you started, but with a whole new perspective? Remember the wise words of Albert Einstein, who, if he'd been a corporate motivational speaker instead of a physicist, might have said, "Team building is relative. The only absolute is the speed of light and the tardiness of Dave from accounting."
Okay.
Stay tuned, my hyperbolic honeybees. Up next, we'll be tackling the culinary conundrum of catering for incompatible existences. Learn why "I'll have what she's having" becomes a temporal paradox when your lunch partner hasn't been born yet. Until then, keep your spaces curved and your parallel lines divergent. Welcome back, my gastronomically gambling gluons. I'm your transcendental taste tester, and we're about to sink our teeth into the mind-bending menu of catering for incompatible existences. Remember, in the multiverse, you are what you eat becomes you are what you might have eaten in a parallel universe where you evolved from sentient broccoli. Now, picture this. You're organizing the annual Multiversal Corporation picnic. Sounds simple enough, right? Ha! I haven't seen an event planner look that terrified since we tried to host a birthday party for the Schrodinger's cat from HR. Let me tell you, deciding on happy birthday or my condolences for the cake was the least of our worries. Speaking of worries, let me regale you with the cautionary tale of the great interdimensional buffet fiasco of 23. Picture, if you will, a grand banquet hall existing simultaneously in 11 dimensions. We had it all. Delicacies from across the multiverse, a chocolate fountain that flowed backwards in time, and a salad bar with literally infinite possibilities. What could go wrong, you ask? Well, let's just say that when the chronivores from the 11th dimension arrived early, or was it late, they didn't just eat their meals, they ate the entire concept of Tuesday. We're still finding temporal croutons in the space-time continuum. It made the antimatter incident from episode 4 look like a picnic, which ironically, it was. But fear not, my calorie-counting cosmonauts. There are ways to navigate these culinary conundrums. First up on our list of interdimensional dietary dilemmas. How to handle dietary restrictions when some of your colleagues don't experience time linearly. Imagine trying to plan a menu when your coworker from accounting experiences Tuesday's lunch before Monday's breakfast. It's enough to make a quantum chef hang up their non-Euclidean apron. The solution? Schrodinger's stew, of course. It's simultaneously the best and worst thing you've ever tasted until you take a bite. For our time-fluid friends, we offer dishes that are their own appetizers, entrees, and desserts all at once. Think of it as a temporal tasting menu.
Yum.
Now, let's talk about the importance of quantum-stable name tags. Nothing ruins a cosmic cocktail hour quite like your identity collapsing into a singularity of social awkwardness. That's why we've developed the Heisenberg uncertainty name tag. It's more reliable for identification than those fickle memory implants in Blade Runner. At least with our tags, you'll know you're you. Probably, maybe. Well, you'll be pretty sure anyway. And I suppose that's why Hello, My Name Is becomes Hello, My Names Are. In a multiverse of infinite possibilities, why limit yourself to just one identity? It's all about embracing your quantum superposition of personas and cross-reality, synergizing your various selves. This raises an interesting philosophical question, doesn't it? In a multiverse where every possible version of ourselves exists, what does it mean to have a singular identity? Perhaps we're all just waves in the quantum ocean of possibility, occasionally collapsing into particles of momentary selfhood. It's why I always recommend the existential crisis eclair for dessert. Nothing puts your fleeting existence into perspective quite like a pastry that questions its own reality with every bite. But this concept of fractured identity across the multiverse presents unique challenges for team building. How do you foster team spirit when your colleagues are literally different people in different realities? It's like trying to herd Schrodinger's cats. They're simultaneously cooperative and uncooperative until you try to get them to participate in a trust fall. Now, let's address the elephant in the room, or should I say, the quantum foam in the coffee machine. Imagine trying to organize a coffee break when the very fabric of space-time becomes frothy at quantum scales. It's like trying to serve espresso on a cosmic trampoline. One moment you're sipping your interdimensional latte. The next you're surfing probability waves in a sea of caffeinated uncertainty. But let's not get too heavy or too light or a superposition of both. For those of you planning your own interdimensional dinner parties, here are some tips for small talk when your small talk could alter the course of history in a parallel universe. 1. Try quantum-entangled conversation starters like, "Lovely weather we're having, aren't we?" Or will have had, or might never experience in this particular branching timeline.
Okay.
2. Discuss the philosophical implications of the appetizers. If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? Becomes, if a canapé exists in a superposition of states, is it still considered finger food? 3. When all else fails, compliment your fellow partygoers on their choice of dimensional phase. I love what you've done with your fourth spatial dimension is always a crowd pleaser.
Nice.
As we wrap up this segment, remember, in the grand cosmic cafeteria, We're all just trying to find our place at the table, even if that table exists in 11 dimensions and is made of exotic matter. Navigating these multiversal team dynamics is like playing the political games in Frank Herbert's Dune. But instead of just worrying about the Harkonnens and the Atreides, you're dealing with every possible version of every possible house across infinite realities. It's enough to make you long for the simplicity of a Gom Jabbar test. Stay tuned, my superpositional sommeliers. Up next, we'll be exploring the ultimate challenge in interdimensional team building, multiversal karaoke. Learn why I Will Survive becomes a quantum probability function and why hitting the right note might just collapse the wave function of the entire audience. Until then, keep your taste buds entangled and your digestive systems non-local. Welcome back, my harmonically entangled hummingbirds. I'm your superpositioned soprano, and we've arrived at the grand finale of our interdimensional team-building extravaganza, multiversal karaoke, where Don't Stop Believin' becomes a quantum probability function, and your performance exists in all possible keys simultaneously. Now, before we dive into the deep end of the dimensional disco, let's address the elephant in the room. Or should I say, the infinite number of elephants in the infinite number of rooms across the multiverse. Yes, I'm talking about the dreaded phenomenon of stage fright. But fear not. In the quantum realm, you're both terrified and confident until someone observes your performance. It's Schrodinger's stage fright. Let's start with the basics. In multiversal karaoke, song selection is key, and every other possible state of matter. When you step up to the interdimensional mic, you're not just choosing a song, you're choosing every possible version of that song across infinite realities. For instance, I Will Survive becomes a quantum superposition of survival scenarios. In one universe, you're surviving a breakup. In another, you're surviving an alien invasion. And in yet another, you're surviving a reality where disco never died. It's less about hitting the right notes and more about collapsing the wave function of Gloria Gaynor's multiverse-spanning career. But wait, there's more. Thanks to the principle of quantum superposition, you'll be singing in all possible keys simultaneously. It's like being in a barbershop quartet with yourself, if that quartet existed in non-Euclidean space and time was more of a suggestion than a rule. Now I know what you're thinking, my pitch-perfect probability clouds. But host, you cry, your voice echoing across the cosmos, what if I hit a resonant frequency that collapses the multiverse? And to that, I say, congratulations, you've just discovered the true power of karaoke. One person's off-key rendition of My Way is another universe's Big Bang. Let's take a moment to explain the science behind this multiversal melody. In quantum mechanics, superposition is the ability of a quantum system to be in multiple states at once until it's observed or measured. It's like Schrodinger's cat, but instead of being alive or dead, the cat is singing every possible meow-sickle number simultaneously. When applied to karaoke, this means that until your audience observes your performance, you're both a rock star and tone-deaf. You're Freddie Mercury and a mercury thermometer. You're Whitney Houston and, well, there's really no negative counterpart to Whitney, is there? But here's where it gets really interesting. Thanks to the observer effect, the very act of your colleagues watching your performance can change the outcome. That means the enthusiastic cheering, or merciful booing, of your interdimensional co-workers can literally alter the fabric of your musical reality. And let's not forget about quantum entanglement, especially crucial for those brave enough to attempt a duet. When two particles are entangled, The quantum state of each particle cannot be described independently. In karaoke terms, this means you and your duet partner are inextricably linked. If one of you hits a high note, the other might suddenly find themselves growling like Tom Waits gargling gravel. It's less about harmonizing and more about maintaining quantum coherence. This phenomenon of shaping reality through observation isn't just a quirky aspect of multiversal karaoke. It's a fundamental principle of team building in our quantum corporate environment. Every time we choose to support a colleague's efforts, we're actively contributing to the reality where they succeed. It's like we're all wearing noise-canceling headphones, but for failure. So the next time Dave from HR takes the stage for his quantum-entangled rendition of Sweet Caroline, remember, your applause isn't just polite encouragement. It's actively shaping the musical landscape of an entire universe. Use this power wisely, and perhaps we can finally course-correct from that unfortunate timeline where Dave's interpretive dance to Bohemian Rhapsody caused the great cubicle collapse of 22. As we wrap up this episode on interdimensional team building, remember the wise words of Albert Einstein, who, if he'd been a karaoke host instead of a physicist, might have said, "Reality is merely an illusion, albeit a very persistent one." But on karaoke night, even that illusion has a sick beat and questionable lyrics. Before we go, here are some quick tips for your next multiversal karaoke night. 1. Always warm up your vocal cords across all 11 dimensions. You never know which version of you will be hitting those high notes. 2. If you forget the lyrics, don't panic. There's a universe out there where those are the correct words. 3. In case of temporal paradox, break glass and reach for the temporal tuning fork. It's guaranteed to get you back on beat, even if that beat exists 3 seconds in the future. 4. Remember, thanks to the no-cloning theorem, each of your karaoke performances is unique and can't be perfectly replicated. It's nature's way of ensuring your rendition of My Way remains a one-hit wonder across the multiverse. And remember, in the grand cosmic karaoke bar of existence, we're all just trying to find our voice. Even if that voice is a quantum superposition of Barry White and a kazoo. Now, I'll leave you with this thought-provoking question. If you could perform a duet with any version of yourself from across the multiverse, which song would you choose, and how might that performance change your understanding of your own potential? Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll be tackling the Infinite Performance Review. Learn why meeting expectations becomes a paradox when those expectations exist across infinite realities. Until then, keep your harmonies entangled and your rhythm non-local. This is your hyperdimensional harmonizer signing off. Remember, in the multiverse, there's no such thing as a wrong note, just alternate musical realities waiting to be explored. Keep singing, my quantum crooners.
Hey, this is Chris from Franklin, Indiana. The Multiverse Employee Handbook was created by Rob Corrigan, is edited by Matt Parkman, and narrated by David from 11 Labs. All science fact-checking is done by Mohinder Suresh. The Employee Handbook staff includes Claire Bennett, Hiro Nakamura, and Elle Bishop. Please be sure to subscribe to get updates on new episodes.